Hello, Toaster Party, and bringing you another budget builder deck tech, and this time it's Ice Barrier. So the new Ice Barrier structure deck is coming out to the TCG soon, and I decided I'd do a deck list for it. Without further ado, let's get into the list. First up, we have one General Wayne of the Ice Barrier, a Speller Trap Searcher for the deck, but you have to either special summon it when you have an Ice Barrier monster on the field and your opponent controls a monster, or you have to somehow finagle it out onto the field. Hence why it's only a 1-of. If this was a 4-star monster, this would have been great, but it's not, so it's just kind of mediocre. We also have one copy of The Awakening of the Possessed Gigobite, an actual very good card for this deck, that allows it to be special summoned if you control a level 4 or lower water monster and a spellcaster, and then you can send those two cards to the graveyard to special summon it from deck. And when it's special summoned, you loop your opponent's hand for 1, and then you and the opponent draw 1 card. And if it's sent from the field to the graveyard, you get to add Spiritual Water Art Owie from deck to hand. Spiritual Water Art Owie basically says tribute a water monster and Thoughtseize your opponent. This is a very powerful interaction that allows you to potentially stop your opponent right in their tracks before they even started. Up next, you have 3 copies of Mirror Master of the Ice Barrier, the best piece of Ice Barrier support that came out of the structure deck, which allows you to special summon an Ice Barrier tuner from deck, but it locks you into water monsters. Just a really powerful starter card, and I wish a lot more of the new Ice Barrier cards were like this one. But speaking of another really good Ice Barrier card that was added to the Ice Barrier lineup, 3 copies of Vessel Miko of the Ice Barrier, a Ice Barrier extender that allows it to special summon from hand when there's an Ice Barrier on field, and when it hits the graveyard, you can also banish it later to special summon a level 1 Ice Barrier token to the field. So just a really solid extender. Up next, we have 1 copy of Defender of the Ice Barrier. It's in here because it's level 3 and an Ice Barrier tuner, so we can use it to modulate the level of Frost Spirit of the Ice Barrier. Up next, we have 2 Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, just a really solid hand trap that's very cheap. We also have 1 Cryomancer of the Ice Barrier, a level 2 Ice Barrier tuner name to send off of Frost Spirit of the Ice Barrier. Up next, we have 2 Prior of the Ice Barrier. It's a somewhat good Ice Barrier name that allows it to tribute summon or tribute off itself to special summon an Ice Barrier from your graveyard, which is a neat way to trigger off the effect of the General Wayne, or to get another good Ice Barrier name back from graveyard to the field. Its special summon from hand effect isn't all that great, but in some scenarios it allows you to make Toad, so it's not too terrible. Then we have 1 Attendant of the Ice Barrier, a somewhat decentish card that can allow you to tribute itself to special summon the Wayne from hand, if that happens, but there's only 1 of each in the deck, so it doesn't show up that often. Its second and better effect is that you can target a level 3 or higher water monster you control and reduce its level by 2 and then special summon it to the field, but you can only do that not on the turn it was sent to the graveyard. Back with better cards, we have 3 copies of DC Diva, just another really nice way to be able to bring out a extender to be able to make your Halqua plays. You get to summon this and then special out the Frost Spirit of the Ice Barrier, which is pretty good, but the one you're usually going to want to target is the Fishborg Launcher, because it's just another really good water extender. We have 3 copies of Frost Spirit of the Ice Barrier, a pretty good water Ice Barrier card that allows you to modulate its level based off of the Ice Barrier monster you sent to the graveyard. I just wish that there were actual floating effects on these Ice Barrier tuners, but there's not. You're on 3 because it's a solid card, but not a great card. Then we have 3 copies of Effect Failure, just another really good cheap hand trap. 1 copy of 1-for-1 because you have a lot of 1-star monsters that you can summon off this thing. 1 copy of the Calm After the Ice Barrier Storm, a card that can be used as either an extender or recovery play if you use its floating effect. Also have 1 copy of Reasoning because your opponent's not going to guess what the level of the cards you're going to hit are, because there's a lot of different levels in this deck. 1 copy of Monster Reborn, 3 copies of Medallion of the Ice Barrier, a card that just searches any Ice Barrier monster from deck to the hand, which can fix your hand to get either the Mirror Master or whatever other extender you might want. 1 Called by the Grave, 3 copies of Clear Wall of the Ice Barrier, basically another copy of Monster Reborn. Thoughtseize, 3 copies of Goes and Match because your entire deck and extra deck is basically all water. On to the extra, we have 1 Trishula Sub-Zero Dragon of the Ice Barrier because it's cool. 1 copy of Trishula Dragon of the Ice Barrier because it's cool, and you can sometimes make it. You can make both of them, but they're not the easiest cards to bring out. We have 1 copy of the Adamancipator Risen Dragite, a really good boss monster that you can make when you're locked into waters because it's a spell or trap negate. 1 copy of Gungear, Dragon of the Ice Barrier, a card that allows you to discard up 2 cards and then destroy the same number of cards that your opponent controls. Sadly, it's targeting removal, though. 1 copy of DC Prima Donna, a card that allows you to shuffle back in one of your opponent's banished cards to add a water monster from deck to hand. And then we also have 1 copy of Coral Dragon, a really good synchro tuner that allows for just to pop on your opponent's turn. 1 copy of Deloran Tiger King of the Ice Barrier, something that can allow you to re-add back some of your face-up Ice Barrier spells, or the Goes and Match in case it actually comes up. We also have 1 copy of Desert Locust. It's a card that allows you to hand loop your opponent for 1, which you can make using your Halqifibrax effect. It also allows you to immediately quick effect Synchro Summon, which is a pretty easy way to get yourself into your Dragite or possibly your Trishula, depending on how your field looks. We also have 1 Tatsunoko just to have another level fulfilled for a Synchro play. 1 copy of Bahamut Shard to make Toad if you already have a Toad. We have 2 Toads because you can make 1 both off Bahamut Shark and because you can actually just naturally make Toad with some of the plays in this deck. We have 2 copies of Mirror Incest Coral Anemone, which basically reads as a monster reborn for any water monster with 1500 or less attack in your graveyard. It locks you into water monsters, but everything else in this deck locks you into water monsters. Then we have 1 Halqifibrax, which is eating up most of this deck's budget, but it's very necessary to do any amount of good setup plays in this deck. Strangely enough, you're not using it as a massive combo extender, but most of the combo is the Halq itself, because you're using it to both make your Desert Locusts and to put a tuner on field for later plays. Onto the side deck, we have 1 copy of Driver and 3 Gamma, 5 Kaijus, that being 2 Gamma Seal and 3 Humongous. We have 3 Cosmic Cyclone, and finally we have 3 There Can Only Be One. Well, I hope you enjoyed the list, and gameplay videos should be coming up soon. Hope you have a great day.